Welcome to Heart of the Lion. My name is Anthony Hart. I want to open up just a little bit of the cosmology today, and I want to talk about some of the ways that I understand things after all the years of spirituality and all the different trainings and things that I've gone through. And for me, the way I understand things is that there's a triangle, these 3 points, and one of them is at the pinnacle. And so at the pinnacle is God itself, the eternal being that will never leave, the eternal being that was there before the creation of the universe and will be there after the end of the universe. God eternal, the eternal being. And that eternal being is the only thing in this universe that transcends everything, that will outlast everything. Everything else will fade. All the mountains will crumble. All the planets will crumble. All the humans will die at some point. All the animals will die. All the plants will die. All the minerals will be reduced to nothingness. Everything has a birth, a life, and a death. Even in yoga, they talk about Om. They say that O-M is how it's spelled, Om, Om. But it's really A-U, M. And Ah means birth. And U is the life. And M is the death. And so it's like that. Birth, life, death, repeat. Birth, life, death, repeat. This beautiful cycle here. That cycle continues going on. It's constantly moving. It never stops and ceases. It continually moves into death. And everything that's on this planet will die at some point, will go into non-existence at some point. And the only thing that remains past all of that is God, the eternal being, the eternal true self. And that being, that God, created the entire universe. But they just say, sometimes traditions will talk about created, but really God is the only thing there truly is. Everything else is a figment of motion, of illusion. A lot of traditions talk about this world being illusory. But it's, one analogy that's given is the ocean. So the ocean has these waves, and these waves are these distinct things. And they have a birth, and they have a life, and they have a death, and they go into non-existence as if they were never there. And God is like the ocean, the water that makes up all these things in this world. And so God, the eternal being, will never go out of existence, but everything else goes through this Om, this birth, life, and death cycle. And so God, at the pinnacle of that triangle, projects itself in, through, and from all the things that exist. So all the things that exist in this manifest world are truly just God projecting itself in a different light, almost like through a prism, like shining the light through a prism, and you get red over here, you get purple over here, you get blue over here, you get green, you get yellow. But the truth is, God is just the pure light that's coming in, and that prism of what it goes through creates the shape of red, creates the shape of human being, of male, of female, of ocean, of water, of fire, of stone, of rock, of mountain, of planet, of this plant or this tree or that animal. And so God eternal is just that projection. And when that projection moves, when that red moves through its birth, life, and death, and the spectrum changes, or the spectrum goes away completely, that projector, that projection, that source of the projection will still be in existence. And so that's the pinnacle. That's God itself, the eternal. And God is always with us, and God is in all things. And we can turn our gaze away from God as if God doesn't exist, but God itself is what is behind the entirety of the universe. And so that's God at the pinnacle here. And then at the two bottom ends is this mundane world. this world of the manifest that we experience, this world of flesh, of trees, of water, of cities, of job titles, everything that exists in the universe, of planets, of gases, all this exists within this spectrum of Om, this birth, life, and death. And it's really got two sides to it. So it's got 2 points to the bottom of that triangle, and that's the masculine and the feminine, the dark and the light, the light and the dark. It's the polarity of this universe. And so this universe has a polarity. And that polarity is actually what makes the universe, in my understanding, work. It's what makes it spin. It's what makes it come to life. This planet couldn't spin without the polarities, without the different magnetic charges, the positive and the negative, the light and the dark, the moon and the sun, the stars, the tides and the oceans and the rivers and the mountains that go up and crumble down, the erosion process and the building up, the magma boiling from the earth and coming up and making these mountains. We wouldn't have all these processes, this birth and this life and this death, if it wasn't for the polarities. And the polarities play off each other and pull each other and turn this world, turn this universe into existence. They give us the birth, the life, and the death. They give us the present moment now continuing on. They give us the past and the future. They give us all these. The way that this universe is put together works because of the polarities. Without the polarities, this universe, this mundane, this manifest would collapse. And so the polarities work together. They're part of the whole. It's best symbolized by the yin-yang symbol, the black and the white, the light and the dark, the masculine and the feminine. And they work in unison. This world wouldn't turn without both polarities working together. So the polarities are actually part of each other. And a lot of times, this aspect of the universe is somehow accidentally, it's not meant on purpose, I don't think. In some ways, maybe it could be. But it's accidentally demonized because God, the eternal being, is what we, truly need to have focus on. And it is a primary focus to have that faith, to understand that God is with you all the time, always, that the eternal light of God is with you, is inside of you, is what you come from, and is your birthright. And there's no tradition or religion in the way of that. A lot of traditions try to get in the way and say, look, there's you, the plebes, there's us, the religion, and then there's God, and we're the intermediaries. And the truth is, no, it's the existing world and God itself, and there's nothing in the way of that. And so that connection is direct. It was given to you. You're part of it. You can never not be part of it. And so that doesn't mean you can't turn away from it and choose not to acknowledge it and choose all kinds of ways of living. Free will, is a thing. But that connection is always there with you. It's who and what we truly are. Not God over everything, but part of God, but made of God. God infused. Without God, none of this world would come to life. We wouldn't have human beings. We wouldn't have language. We wouldn't have sight. Any of this stuff is infused with the power of God to be allowed to come into being. But also, there's nothing wrong with this world. And sometimes there's a demonization of the masculine or the feminine, the polarity, the mundane, because it's just a wave cruising along, and it's not the eternal being, that somehow it should be shunned, or it's not good, or whatever it is. And the truth is, there's nothing wrong with that creation. That creation was created by God. It's a beautiful creation, in fact. And there's nothing wrong with being masculine. There's nothing wrong with being feminine. There's nothing wrong with the daytime. There's nothing wrong with the sunrise, the sunset. There's nothing wrong with the nighttime, the darkness. These are all parts of God's creation. And there's nothing wrong with this. The problem is only when that is the only important thing in our lives. And that higher power, that beautiful, eternal light that we're infused of, that allows us to breathe this breath of life, allows us to drink this water, is not made somehow maybe the main, or is not focused upon, that it's not given its due. And it is there. It's there with us always. When people have been on the hardest of times, the most terrible of times, and have made it through somehow, some way, even when all the odds and the logic was against them, there was part of that light, that God that showed itself in that times, that beautiful power to come from nothing and become everything and give the key to life. And that's God, the eternal being. And that being is always with us. And it's so beautiful to recognize that. But this world is not to be shunned for that. This world is to be enjoyed. You know, I was listening to a spiritual leader, and he was saying something about, he was saying, if you have to make a cup of tea, make a cup of tea. It's okay to make a cup of tea. There's nothing wrong. Enjoy the tea. It's good. Just don't give it as if it's the only thing in the world. There's still God the eternal, and there's the cup of tea. Enjoy the cup of tea. It's beautiful. It's an accoutrement to the main dish of God. And that's the truth for us too, is this life is to be enjoyed. There's nothing wrong with the masculine, the feminine, the light, the dark, the different time cycles of life. They're to be enjoyed. But the God, the eternal, is projecting itself through all of that. So anyway, I wanted to talk about this little structure of God, the eternal, projecting itself into the masculine and the feminine, the polarity of life, and that we exist in this polarity, in this spinning polarity, this negative and this positive, this masculine and this feminine, and all the things of this life, the relationships we're in, the jobs we have, the children we have, the impact we have, the things that we think, the thoughts that we think, our days and our nights, the water that we drink, the interactions that we have, the sights that we see are all part of this manifest, and it's beautiful. There's nothing wrong with this manifest world. It's just this polarity that spins, and it's to be embraced and to be enjoyed, and to also be understood that God the eternal is projecting itself through all things. God is in all things, and God is always with us, the eternal being, and will never leave us. So wanted to talk a little bit about that structure. I hope you guys are doing great where you're at, and God bless you all, and we'll see you in the next video, okay?